Hello and welcome to yet another YouTube video here on this channel. Today is Sunday, which means that it is time for another weekly reflection, or it is actually called daily reflections, but it should be called weekly reflections because I do them once a week. In today's video, I plan to talk about how changing productivity apps and productivity apps in general actually can be a sign of a different problem, and I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So sometimes we feel like we're not productive enough, and we feel like changing the apps we use, whether that's one app or all of the apps, can actually help us accomplish more and do more. And I feel a little bit the same way about procrastination. So I think procrastination isn't the problem, it is a sign of another problem which you might have. And to tell you a story about how that felt for me. So I've struggled with procrastination from time to time, and for around a year ago, a little over a year ago, I started changing my productivity apps in order to become more productive. I felt like the apps were the problem. I recently, or a while back, figured out that the apps weren't the actual problem. The actual problem was in my head, and there were some things I needed to clarify and fix and go through in order to become more productive and in general feel better with myself. So that is one of the things it might be. There might be a sign of our procrastination, or changing apps might be a sign of a deeper problem. That's the first thing. The second thing, which I've also experienced, is that you actually just try and do too much. So I started using a notebook, a pocket-sized notebook, to plan out my days, and I started doing this in 2024, so it's been around 3 months, soon to be 4 months. I started doing that because the pocket notebook had limited space. There was only so many things I could write, and I quickly figured out that I was actually trying to do too much, and that is one of the reasons calendar blocking has never actually worked for me. So every time I tried to calendar block, I always ended up packing my calendar with too many things, so I would have 6 or 7 to-dos, 1 hour each, back to back to back, in order to be able to accomplish all of the things that I wanted or I felt like I needed. And one of the things I learned from the bullet journal method is to try and align my values, my goals, with my actual to-do list, which is a little bit harder than it seems. So I have these 3 questions I ask myself. One is, do I have to do it? The second one is, do I want to do it? And the third one is, can this be delegated to someone else? So if I have to do it, I have to do it. There is there is nothing else to say. There are some things like your taxes every year, which you don't necessarily want to do, but you have to do them, and that is just how it is. Then we have the things you do want to do. You want to try to do the most of those things. You want to try to do the most of the things you actually want to do. And the last one is, can I delegate this to someone else? So if I don't want to do it and I have to do it, I try to the best of my ability, if it is possible, to delegate it to someone else. Sometimes that is impossible and you have to do it yourself, but other times it can be great to delegate those tasks to someone else. But if I do not have to do it and I do not want to do it, I probably shouldn't do it either. So that's the questions I ask myself in order to figure out what am I actually going to work on, because it is so easy to get caught up in the habit of doing something every single day, even if you do not want to do it at all. So that's the main two things I have experienced when it comes to actually changing productivity apps to try and to feel a little bit more productive. And you might have this shiny new tool effect that every time you try and change your apps, the first couple of weeks or days, some might even experience it for a month. We feel like we are being extra productive. We are taking more notes. We are planning better in our calendars, in our to-do lists, simply because we have this shiny new tool syndrome. And once we then again get overwhelmed, everything just goes back to the way it was, and we start changing our apps again. That's why I think and I believe that both changing apps and procrastination, which are things that goes hand in hand, because most of the times when we have 3 or 4 things we have to do and we aren't able to accomplish any of them, it is probably because we are procrastinating, and we feel like changing our apps will stop us from actually procrastinating. So I think those two things go hand in hand, and I believe that they are a sign of a deeper problem. So they are only, procrastination and changing apps are only the symptoms, not necessarily the actual problem. So in order to get rid of those two things, you have to take out the whole problem, which I'm not sure what it might be for you. It might take a little bit of self-reflection in order to figure it out. And there are some things you can do in order to procrastinate less. And some call these hacks, others call these discipline and just being disciplined. And it might work for a while. But if you are constantly procrastinating, constantly struggling with shiny new tool syndrome, these hacks or discipline won't cut it for long enough time. You might feel better for a month, 2, even 3 months, but the problems will keep coming back unless you handle the actual problem, which is really hard. And I believe in discipline. It's not like I'm saying that you shouldn't be disciplined at all, but when you use discipline to handle a more complex problem, the problem will never go away, and you might even end up feeling a little or very unhappy because of it. So I'm a big believer of discipline, but I don't believe discipline can solve problems that are deeper in our head than just procrastinating. That's what I am trying to say. It is much harder to say it to the camera than it was when I planned out this video in my head. Anyways, there are things you can do in order to procrastinate a little less going forward for the next couple of weeks if you have something really important. And just the last thing I wanted to say is that we all end up procrastinating, no matter how disciplined you are, how many hacks you use, or even if you don't have any problems in your life at all, we will procrastinate from time to time. Our minds will drift away. We will think of something else. It will happen. And it is okay if it happens sometimes. It becomes a problem if it happens every day, which it has done for me. And I felt like changing my apps were the problem. So that was today's daily or weekly reflections. If you have any questions, any thoughts, do leave them down below and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope to see you again quite soon.